Good afternoon. Welcome to the Analyst. Today we'll be taking up 7 newspaper articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express and discussing them. The handout for the same will be available in the description of this video for your kind perusal. Please have a look at that. The first article that we'll take up is related to the 4 labor codes, as the central government operationalized the labor codes and published the rules for the same, even as the trade unions across India protested. The second article is related to the role of the governor in the case of a hung assembly, as the Tamil Nadu governor demanded for the physical letters of support before swearing C.J. Vijay as the Tamil Nadu chief minister. Additionally, we'll take up 5 articles in the prelims pointers section which will be helpful for your prelims preparation. The first article is related to the 4 labor codes, as the central government has fully operationalized the 4 labor codes in India and published the rules regarding the same, even as the trade unions across India have been protesting against them. Therefore, we'll discuss what are the acts which were subsumed by the 4 labor codes in India, what are the changes brought about by the 4 labor codes, what was the need for the labor codes in India. Also, we'll analyze the concerns associated with the labor codes and a few suggestions in this regard. This is important in GS3 under the topic Indian economy and issues related to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development and employment, as well as inclusive growth. First, let us observe what are the acts which were subsumed under the 4 labor codes. Please try to remember these from the prelims point of view. The Code on Wages 2019 subsumed under it 4 previous acts. That is Payment of Wages Act 1936, Minimum Wages Act 1948, Payment of Bonus Act 1965 and the Equal Remuneration Act 1976. The Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2019 subsumed under it the acts Factory Act 1948, Mines Act 1952, Dock Workers Act, Building and Other Construction Workers Act, Plantation Labours Act, Contract Labour Act, etc. While the Industrial Relations Code 2019 subsumed under it the Trade Unions Act 1926, Industrial Employment Act 1946, Industrial Disputes Act 1947. And the Code on Social Security 2019 subsumed under it the Employees Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1952, Employees State Insurance Act 1948, Employees Compensation Act, Employees Exchange Act, Maternity Benefit Act 1961 and the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972, etc. Now, what was the need for these 4 labor codes in India? One of the foremost challenge was that the erstwhile labor laws in India, they were complex and there was a plethora of laws. For example, there were more than 40 central laws and also more than 100 laws enacted by the various states for the labor regulations in India. Therefore, it was necessary to consolidate them and to compile them. Also, it was observed even by the economic survey that poor enforcement mechanisms led to 1 in 3 wage workers in India to be left out from the social security benefits. Therefore, there was again need for consolidation to ensure that the social security benefits reach the wage workers. Additionally, the earlier labor laws, they constrained the growth of the firms, the growth of the enterprises in India by imposing a high compliance burden, a high administrative burden. For example, multiple registrations were required. Also, even the exit option was not an easy one. For example, for the closure of a factory, closure of a firm which employed more than 100 workers, it required the prior permission of the government. Therefore, the firms, they were encouraged to employ less than 100 workers and to ensure that they are beyond the reaches of the earlier labor laws. Additionally, the capitalists in India, they were encouraged to go for the establishment of the capital intensive industries rather than the establishment of labor intensive industries, which was a natural advantage for India because of the abundant supply of human resources and labor in India. Also, there was a contractualization of labor. For example, even the data points out that from 2005, the contractualization of labor increased. In 2005, just about 26% and it increased to 36% by 2018. Therefore, to counter this contractualization of labor, the compilation of the labor norms was required in the form of the 4 labor codes. Additionally, the collective bargaining rights of the workers were sought to be protected through the 4 labor codes. Because Earlier, there were too many trade unions, and because of a large number of the trade unions and the lack of the formal recognition for the trade unions, they were not having the collective bargaining power. Now the four labor codes seek to empower the trade unions also, for example, going for the concept of the sole negotiating union. And also it seeks to increase the coverage. For example, earlier the coverage of the labor laws was extending mostly to the organized sector, and the organized sector workers in India are just in single digits, less than 10%, and now the four labor codes, they are seeking to cover under them both organized sector as well as the unorganized sector workers. Now let us observe the provisions and the changes which are brought about by the four labor codes in India. First, the Code of Wages 2019. It seeks to ensure that there is a universal minimum wage which is ensured. This universal minimum wage is ensured for all the categories, both organized as well as unorganized, and this will be in the form of a statutory right, therefore. Plus, the Code of Wages 2019 seeks to introduce a floor wage. This will be the national floor wage, below which there cannot be any fixing of a minimum wage. The minimum wages can be fixed separately by the state governments also, but they cannot be below this floor wage. And this floor wage therefore ensures that there is at least an adequacy of remuneration and there is a national floor. Also, it seeks to provide a criteria for the fixation of the wages. This wage fixation criteria can be dependent upon the skill levels. For example, it can be different for the skilled workers, semi-skilled workers and the highly skilled workers. Also, it will depend upon the geographic areas as well as the job conditions. For example, if it is in the hazardous occupations or life-threatening occupations, then the wages must be higher. Similarly, it seeks to ensure gender equality in the employment. This will be ensuring the gender equality for the transgenders also, and gender equality for both men and women, ensuring the equality in terms of recruitment, wages, employment conditions, that is for similar work, similar wages should be there, similar remuneration should be there. Additionally, it seeks to ensure a universal coverage for the wage payment. For example, ensuring that there is timely payment and there will be penalties if there are delays in the payment of the wages, and also there will be no unauthorized deductions. Earlier, the laws provided that there will be no unauthorized deduction from the wages of the workers who were drawing for less than 24,000 per month. Now, irrespective of the wages, there will be no unauthorized deductions. Additionally, it seeks to ensure that there is compensation if there is overtime work which is done by a worker, and this compensation will be at the rate of 2 times from the normal wages rate. Additionally, it also seeks to transform the role of the inspectors. The traditional role of the inspector is now pushed towards the role of inspector cum facilitator, where the inspector also advises regarding the compliance of the labor laws to the management, to the employers as well. And it also seeks to ensure that there may be a compounding of offenses. For example, the first time offenses which are non-imprisonable, they can be compounded in lieu of the collection of some amount, in lieu of collection of some penalty or some fees. But the second offense within a period of 5 years cannot be compounded. The Code of Wages 2019 therefore focuses upon the decriminalization of offenses. Therefore, it will ensure increased compliance, because the focus will be less upon the imprisonment, rather it will be more upon the compounding of offenses. Therefore, it will lead to the collection of some amount in the form of penalties and fees, and the amount so collected in the form of penalties, it will be used for the Social Security Fund. Then there is the Industrial Relations Code 2020. It seeks to formalize the fixed term employment. Through the fixed term employment, the employers can employ the workers for a definite amount of time, and therefore the workers will also benefit because they will be able to get employed through direct time bound contracts. Therefore, they will get parity in terms of wages, in terms of employment conditions with the regular or the permanent workers of the factory or the company. Therefore, they will get the same pay for the same work, although their contract will be for a limited time, for a fixed period of time. Simultaneously, the employers will also benefit from the fixed term employment, because they will be able to employ the workers for that much amount of time for which they need for the work in the company. Additionally, the workers will also be eligible for gratuity. If they are employed for a continuous period of more than 1 year, they will be eligible to get the gratuity from the company. Earlier, this period was at least 5 years. Additionally, it seeks to establish a reskilling fund. This reskilling fund will be used to train the retrenched workers, to train the workers who are laid off. Now, where will the money come from for this reskilling fund? It will be through the contribution from the employers. The employers, when they are retrenching any workers, then they will have to provide 15 days of wages in this reskilling fund for that worker, and this will be in addition to the retrenchment compensation that they will have to pay. The employer will have to pay the retrenchment compensation as well to the workers. Also, it seeks to recognize the trade unions. The trade union, which has 51% membership of the total number of workers on the muster roll of a company, will be treated as the negotiating union. If there is no trade union which has 51% of the membership of the total number of workers, then a negotiating council may be established. Additionally, the Industrial Relations Code seeks to expand the definition of the workers. It will now include the sales promotion staff, journalists, even the staff in the supervisory role also. That is, whoever is drawing salary up to 24,000 per month. And it seeks to broaden the definition of industry as well, as all systematic employer-employee activities, regardless of the profit, regardless of the capital which is involved in the industry, they will be treated as the part of the Industrial Relations Code. Additionally, it seeks to increase the threshold for the layoffs and the retrenchment and the closure, for which the prior permission is required. Earlier, any industry which was employing more than 100 workers, if it was going for a closure or retrenchment, then it had to seek prior permission from the government. Now this limit is increased to 300 workers. Therefore, it will ensure an easy exit option for the small players also. Also, it seeks to ensure there is women's representation in the grievance committees, and it should be proportional to their number, that is proportional to the number of women workers in that factory or company. And it also seeks to formalize the work from home provision for the service sector based upon mutual consent of the employers and the employees. And it seeks to provide for the establishment of the industrial tribunals. The industrial tribunals in the form of 2-member tribunals, one from the judicial side and another from the administrative side, which will ensure that the disputes are resolved, and the parties, if they are not able to resolve the dispute through the negotiation, then after the failure of negotiation, within 90 days, they can approach the industrial tribunals. Additionally, it seeks to impose certain regulations regarding the strikes or lockouts. That for any strikes or lockouts, at least 14 days notice has to be given to the employer before the strike. Also, it seeks to expand the definition of strike also, that any mass casual leave can also be treated as a strike. This is to prevent the flash strikes in the industries. Also, again, here also the focus is upon the decriminalization and the compounding of the offenses. Next, there is a code on social security. It seeks to expand the employee state insurance coverage. Now it will be pan-India. Earlier it was in the notified areas only. Now it will be in pan-India. Also, even the firms where there are less than 10 employees, they also can voluntarily come under the employee state insurance coverage scheme, provided that there is consent of both the employers and the employees. Also, it is mandatory now for the hazardous occupations. And it seeks to ensure that the EPF inquiries, the Employee Provident Fund inquiries, they are made time bound. For that, 5-year limit has been imposed for initiating the EPF inquiries, and even the recovery proceedings have to be completed within a period of 2 years, which can be extended by 1 more year. And to ensure that it remains time bound and the dispute resolution is time bound, therefore the suo motu reopening of the cases has also been prohibited now. Also, it seeks to reduce the EPF appeal deposit. For example, earlier, if a decision was given by the EPFO and the employer wanted to appeal against it, then they had to ensure that a certain amount, from 40 to 70% of the amount that was under claim, that had to be deposited. Now that amount which had to be deposited before the filing of the appeal by the employer has been reduced to just 25%. Also, it seeks to ensure that there is lesser compliance burden. Therefore, the employers are allowed to go for self-assessment for the construction cess, for the building and other construction workers. And it seeks to ensure that the gig and platform workers, they are also included under the social security benefits. Therefore, the aggregators, they are expected to contribute 1 to 2% of their annual turnover for ensuring their social security. And it seeks to establish the social security fund. This will be used for financing the schemes for the unorganized gig workers and platform workers. And where will the money come from for the social security fund? It will be through the amount which is collected via the compounding of offenses, that is the collection of the penalties. Therefore, it seeks to also expand the definition of the dependents. The Code on Social Security expands the definition of dependents to include the maternal grandparents now. Also, in the case of female workers, it will include the dependent parents-in-law as well. And it seeks to ensure that there is a uniform definition of wages, that the wages will now include basic pay, DNS allowance, retaining allowance, and also 50% of the total remuneration added back to compute the wages for calculating the gratuity, pension, and the social security benefits. Additionally, even the commuting accidents will be covered under the benefits. That is, the accidents which are happening while commuting from work to home, that will also be considered as employment related accident, and for that compensation will have to be given by the employer. And gratuity will be allowed for the fixed term employees after just 1 year of employment. Earlier it was 5 years. And it also seeks to promote again the inspector cum facilitation system, which will be based upon the randomized web based inspections, that is algorithm based inspections of the factories. Additionally, it seeks to mandate that there is digitization to ensure compliance. Therefore, mandatory maintenance of the electronic records and also the registers, returns, etc. maintained in the electronic format. And if there are any vacancies in the enterprise, then they have to be reported to a specific career center before the recruitment to ensure that there is transparency in the recruitments also. Then there is the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020. It seeks to ensure that there is a unified registration, that there is a uniform threshold, that is all the companies having more than 10 workers, more than 10 employees, for them a single registration will be required. Earlier, under various acts, about 6 registrations were required. Now only 1 registration is sufficient, and therefore this will maintain a centralized database. Therefore, it will ensure ease of doing business. Additionally, it can be extended to include the hazardous workers or the workers in the hazardous occupations. And even if there is only a single worker in the hazardous occupation, life-threatening occupation, even those enterprises can be brought under the ambit of this code by the government. Additionally, it seeks to simplify the compliance by ensuring 1 license, 1 registration and 1 return framework. And there is a wider definition of migrant workers now, that is workers who are employed directly or who are employed through contractors. Additionally, the enterprises must declare the number of interstate migrant workers that they are employing. The benefits will be that the migrant workers, they will be able to get annual travel allowance and also the portability of the public distribution system, therefore getting access to various other welfare benefit schemes of the government as well as social security benefits. It seeks to formalize the appointment via the appointment letters also. The appointment letters, they should mention what are the wages, what are the service conditions, what are the salary, etc. And women's employment is also ensured to be increased in all types of establishment, even encouraging the employment of women even during the night hours also, if there is consent of the employee, plus there are adequate safety measures also put in place. And it also seeks to establish a national database for the unorganized workers so that there is help in the policy formulation in the long term. Additionally, it seeks to ensure that the victim compensation also takes place, for which the courts can give directions, and at least 50% of the fines which are imposed and collected from the employers, that can be given directly to the victim as compensation. And it seeks to reform the contract labor also. For this, the applicability threshold has been increased from 20 workers to 50 workers. Now there will be no contract labor board, rather there will be a designated authority which will give advice regarding the core and non-core activities. Additionally, if the wages of the contract workers are not paid by the contractor, then the wages of the contract workers will have to be paid by the organization which is finally employing them, for which they are working. And also there is the establishment of the safety committees. The code ensures that there will be safety committees established for the firms which are employing more than 500 workers, and it will have the representation of both the employers and the workers. There will be the establishment of National Occupational Safety and Health Advisory Board, which will be a tripartite board, that is having representation from the employer, from the employees, as well as the state. And the factory thresholds have also been revised, that is to include from earlier 10 to now 20 workers where power is involved in the factory, and also from 20 to 40 workers for the factories which are operating without power. And it seeks to establish the Social Security Fund, for which the money will come from the imposition of various penalties in the form of the compounding of offences. And it seeks to ensure that there is a regulation of the working hours, that there will be a maximum working hours of 8 hours per day and 48 hours per week. And also if there is overtime, which can be done only via mutual consent of the employer and the employee, the payment will be double of the normal working time. And additionally, there will be free annual health checkups to ensure that there is preventive health care as well. Now, what are the concerns regarding these 4 labor codes? First, the concerns regarding the Code on Industrial Relations 2020. It seeks to increase the threshold for seeking the permission before the layoffs. Now, the enterprises which will be employing more than 300 workers will have to seek the prior permission from the government before they go for the retrenchment or the layoffs. Earlier, this criteria was just 100 workers. When the criteria was 100 workers, there was a large proportion of the industries or establishment which were employing 99 workers or just less than 100 workers. Now, there will be a large number of enterprises which will employ less than 300 workers just to escape this prior permission criteria. Also, it seeks to ensure that there is a sole negotiating union. There are a large number of trade unions in India. If the sole negotiating union is emphasized upon, then effectively the smaller trade unions, they will become obsolete. Also, it seeks to impose regulations on the strikes and lockouts. For example, the strikes can be done only after giving 14 days notice. Also, the strike has to commence within 60 days from the date of the notice. And the strikes are prohibited during the conciliation proceedings, during the pendency of the conciliation proceedings. So these are effectively restricting the rights of the workers. Also, it seeks to legalize the fixed term employment. Now, if the fixed term employment is legalized, then the firms, they will go for rather fixed term employment rather than employing workers on a permanent basis. Therefore, it will further lead to reduction in the permanent employment. Now, regarding the Code on Wages 2019, it provides for a floor wage, but it has not been specified. Also, the distinction between the floor wage and the minimum wage has not been specified. And it seeks to fix a minimum wage, but the minimum wage has to be revised continuously because the consumption patterns change. Therefore, the consumption basket changes. Therefore, there has to be a regular family budget expenditure survey every 5 years, and therefore regular updation of the minimum wage. Similarly, it seeks to ensure that the inspectors, they will become inspectors cum facilitators. But we do not have enough inspectors. We are not fulfilling any of the norms of the International Labour Organization also in terms of the ratio of the inspectors versus the workers. And in terms of the fixing of the minimum wages, a base is the calculation of the calories. For the calculation of the calories, we are taking into account as the 3 adult consumption units per family. That is 1 for the worker and 0.8 for the spouse and 0.6 each for the 2 children. This should rather be treated as 3.5 adult consumption units in terms of the calorie calculation. Therefore, the increase in the minimum wage will happen because there should be gender parity, that the spouse of the worker should also be treated as 1 adult person rather than 0.8 in terms of the calorie calculation. And the children, they also need more calorie consumption during their growing phase. Therefore, for them also it should be increased, and the family should be treated as 3.5 adult consumption units rather than 3 adult consumption units in terms of the calorie calculation. Therefore, the minimum wages will have to be revised upwards. Additionally, there has to be a relative importance, more importance given to the known food items also, as the consumption patterns change, as the living standard changes in the country, in the economy. There are other concerns also. For example, the universal coverage, that still remains a mirage. For example, these codes, they cover for the enterprises which are employing more than 10 workers. What about the enterprises which are employing less than 10 workers? Similarly, there are negligible gains for the social security. The social security related provisions, they have merely been put in a single code, they have merely been consolidated. Further additions are required for the social security benefits for the unorganized workers especially. Also, the standards are not specified, rather they have been left to the appropriate government authority to notify. Therefore, there have been opposition from the trade unions, and therefore there will be implementation challenges also. One of the major causes behind it will also be the lack of adequate number of human resources in terms of the enforcement, that is the inspectors cum facilitators. Also, the coverage needs to be increased and the awareness needs to be increased, and the 4 labor codes, they were also passed without adequate parliamentary debate. So what are the suggestions that we can give regarding the 4 labor codes in India? First, we need to ensure that there is transparency. To address these concerns by various stakeholders, including the trade unions, the government can present a white paper before the parliament itself by detailing the enforcement capacity, the adjudication machinery, the staffing of the inspectorate, and also the state-wise rule-making progress, so that there is transparency. Additionally, the social security thresholds, they need to be updated. We need to address the erosion of the inspection powers and also ensure that the law-making powers, they are not transferred towards the executive notifications. Regarding the implementation, we can give the suggestion that the adequate number of human resources, that is inspectors, are required. The inspectors need to be trained, and also there needs to be training in terms of the adoption of technology. Awareness campaigns can be held by including the trade unions as well as the non-governmental organizations, and also the grievance redressal mechanisms can be made more efficient. There needs to be a hand-holding for the small and medium enterprises as well as micro enterprises to ensure that they are getting the financial support during the transition period when they are going for the compliance towards the labor laws, and they are given the incentives for the compliance. Regarding the review mechanism, a tripartite body can be established which will have representation from the employers, employees, the industry body as well as the state, and which will be responsive for the evolving conditions, the evolving sectors, the emerging sectors as well as the emerging technologies. Now, coming to the article on the subject of the minimum wages, the Code on the Wages has said that the criteria shall be separately specified by the union government via special order or general order, and the rate of the wages for a day will be fixed. For fixing the floor wage, the union government may consult a central advisory board taking into account the minimum living standard, including food, clothing, housing and any other factors considered appropriate. And the Code on Industrial Relations says that if there is only one registered trade union operating in an industrial establishment having a membership of not less than 30% of its total workers, the employer of such industrial establishment shall recognize such trade union as the sole negotiating union. The number of hours of work for a normal working day for an employee whose wage period is on a daily basis shall be 8 hours. For the other employees, the number of weekly working hours shall not exceed as 48 hours, and also every employer shall issue the wage slips electronically or in the physical form to the employees. There is a means practice question also. Discuss the need for the 4 labor codes in India, examine the major concerns associated with their implementation, and suggest measures to ensure a balanced labor reform framework. Please try to write it. The next article is related to the role of the governor in case of a hung assembly, as the governor of Tamil Nadu demanded for the production of the physical letters of support from at least 118 MLAs in Tamil Nadu before going for the swearing of the TVK chief as the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu. Therefore, we'll discuss the role of the governor in case of a hung assembly, the observations of the Supreme Court in this regard, as well as the suggestions of a few committees. This is important in GS2 under the topic appointment to various constitutional posts, powers, functions and responsibilities of various constitutional bodies. First, let us observe what will be the role of the governor. The governor appoints the chief minister under Article 164. Now, if there is a hung assembly, then there is no fixed procedure for choosing a chief minister. Rather, it is based upon the constitutional conventions, and the primary objective of the governor in such cases is to ensure that there will be the formation of a stable government. So how does he go about it? He is guided by the recommendations of the Sarkaria Commission, the 5-member committee of the governors appointed by the president, the conventions established through various Supreme Court rulings. But he will not be guided by his personal opinions of bona fide or any ipse dixit, that is any own say-so opinions, etc. Rather, he has the legal duty to maintain the constitutional machinery in the state, and that will be maintained if there is the appointment of a person as a chief minister within a reasonable time limit. Now, this reasonable time has also not been defined, but the governor cannot wait indefinitely. If he waits indefinitely, this allows an opportunity for horse trading of the MLAs. And the Article 356, that is the imposition of the president's rule, that can also be resorted only as a last resort. Meanwhile, in the B.R. Kapoor and the Rameshwar Prasad cases, the court had held that the governor can dissolve the legislative assembly under the Article 174 clause 2b even before the first meeting of the state legislature, in case he is sure that there won't be the formation of a stable government, and to avoid the breakdown of the constitutional machinery because of the inability of the parties to stake the claim. Therefore, what will be the order of preference in which the governor will extend the invitation to the contenders? First option, as per the Sarkaria Commission and also as per the observations of the Supreme Court in the past, first he will give the invitation to the pre-poll alliance of the parties which has a clear majority in the assembly. The second option will be, if no alliance, no pre-poll alliance has a clear majority, then he will invite the single largest party that could possibly demonstrate the majority support in the assembly. Meanwhile, in the S.R. Bommai case, the court had even held that there is no obligation for a political party forming the government for it to have a majority in the assembly. There can be minority government also, where it has to just ensure that it enjoys the confidence of the House. The third option will be that he can allow a post-poll alliance also to form the government which can demonstrate the majority, because the coalition governments, they have become the new norm now. And the last resort will be the imposition of the president's rule, that is, he can recommend for the imposition of the Article 356 in the state. Therefore, the floor test becomes the objective means to prove the majority in the House, and whereas the Tamil Nadu governor insisted on the production of the physical letters of support, therefore the writ petition was also filed in the Supreme Court challenging the same, and hence, as per the committee of the governors also, the test of confidence has to be done via the voting in the assembly. And in the S.R. Bommai case also, the court had observed that the floor test is usually for the incumbent chief minister who is alleged to have lost the majority support. The floor test should not be used for the formation of a new government. But later on, the Supreme Court itself had observed that it is better to leave the fate of the electorate's mandate in the voting. It should not be left to the personal discretion of the governor. Therefore, the floor test only should determine the confidence even while the formation of the government is there. Let us also observe some other judgments of the Supreme Court regarding the governor. In the Rameshwar Prasad versus Union of India, the court had held that the governor enjoys immunity. He has the immunity under Article 361, that he is not answerable to any court for the exercise of his powers or functions or any acts done in his official capacity. But the court can examine the validity of these official actions also on the ground of mala fide. And if there is whimsical conduct, then this is subject to judicial review. Additionally, for the imposition of Article 356, it should not be based upon his individual opinion. In the BP Singhal versus Union of India, the court held that the president has the power to remove the governor without giving a reason, without giving the opportunity to be heard. But it should not be done arbitrarily or unreasonably, and if it is done so, then it can be challenged. In Nabam Rabia versus Deputy Speaker judgment, the court held that the governor does not have broad discretionary powers under Article 174. Therefore, he could not summon or determine the legislative agenda or address without the consultation with the Council of Ministers. In NCT of Delhi versus Union of India, The court held that the constitutional morality imposes the obligations, imposes the responsibilities on the constitutional offices. Therefore, the governor also should act as per the constitutional morality and the obligations so imposed. In Kaushal Kishore versus State of Uttar Pradesh case, the court held that it should be left to the wisdom of the parliament whether it wants to legislate or bring in a code to restrain the public functionaries from making disparaging or vitriolic remarks, as it may amount to a reasonable restriction upon the freedom of speech and expression under Article 19 subclause 2. But there are certain challenges associated with the office of governor. For example, the appointment itself, that the appointment should be done after the consultation with the chief minister as observed by the Sarkaria and Punchi commissions, and the governor's office should not be treated as a retirement avenue for the politicians which are at the fag end of their political career. Also, there should not be a misuse of Article 356 at the behest of the center, and also the appointment of the chief minister in case there is a hung assembly as is happening in the state of Tamil Nadu, and there should be power to grant the sanction against the state government officials, as well as the reservation of bills should be done as per the constitutional conventions and the Supreme Court guidelines under Article 200 and 201, and also the withholding of the assent should not be done at the behest of the central government, rather it should be done as per the constitutional morality. Also, the center should not remove the governor based upon unjust or arbitrary grounds. Let us also observe the recommendations regarding the governor by various committees. The Rajamannar committee recommended that the governor should not be functioning like an agent of the center. He is rather the constitutional head of the state and therefore function as such. The Sarkaria commission recommended that regarding the appointment, first there should be a consultation with the chief minister of that state for which the governor is being appointed. Also, the governor should be an eminent person who should be a detached figure not involved in the active politics of that state, and he should not be a member of the ruling party. Regarding the removal of the governor, the Sarkaria Commission recommended that it should be based upon rare circumstances where there are compelling circumstances warranting the removal of the governor, and there should be an explanation given, or rather there should be concrete grounds on which he should be removed. Regarding the imposition of Article 356, the Sarkaria Commission recommended that the governor should recommend it sparingly and only as a last resort when there is internal subversion, physical breakdowns, or non-compliance with the constitutional directives of the Union of India. The Venkatacharya Commission recommended that there should be an appointment committee for the governor, for the appointment of the governor, including the Prime Minister, Home Minister, Speaker and the Chief Minister, and the removal should be done only after consulting the Chief Minister. The second ARC recommended that the governor should be a non-partisan person, and also the interstate council guidelines can be taken into account regarding the discretion of the governor. The Punchi Commission recommended that the governor should not be the chancellor of the universities, and the amendment of Article 356 can be done to ensure that there is imposition of the Article 356 only in the specific troubled area, not the entire state, and the impeachment can also be done by the state assembly for the governor. There is a mains practice question also. Analyze the role of the governor in the context of a hung assembly. Refer to the relevant Supreme Court judgments. Please try to write it. The next article is related to the Chief of Defence Staff, as the Lieutenant General Raja Subramani is the next Chief of Defence Staff. This is important in prelims under the topic Current Events of National and International Importance. First, let us observe a few facts regarding the Chief of Defence Staff. The Chief of Defence Staff was created by the Government of India in 2019, and the Chief of Defence Staff is the highest ranking military officer in India. He is a 4-star military officer equivalent in rank to the Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Naval Staff and the Chief of Air Staff. He is appointed by the Appointments Committee of the Cabinet, which is chaired by the Prime Minister of India, and he is 12th in the Indian order of precedence. Now, what was the need for the Chief of Defence Staff in India? Because he functions as the single point military advice. He gives the advice to the Defence Minister, and therefore he also ensures the jointness among the armed forces, because otherwise they have separate operational and administrative structures. They have limited coordination, therefore in logistics, training, communication and planning, and the Chief of Defence Staff ensures a jointness. And also there was a weakness of the earlier Chiefs of Staff Committee, as there it functioned on a rotational system headed by the senior most service chief. Therefore there was a lack of continuity and there was a lack of long-term strategic direction. Now this is provided for via the Chief of Defence Staff, and we learnt our lessons from the Kargil War. as it highlighted that there were major gaps in the intelligence sharing among the agencies and also the operational coordination among the three armed forces. Therefore, there was a need for an integrated theater commands because the modern warfare requires it, and the modern warfare requires the preparation based upon geography and task based commands rather than the commands separated on the basis of army, navy and air force. Also, there was a communication gap between the civilian and the military leadership, and the service headquarters functioned as the attached offices of the Ministry of Defense, therefore causing bureaucratic delays. Additionally, we needed to ensure that the defense resource management is more efficient. Therefore, there was an independent budget prioritization by the individual services earlier. Now it is determined by the Chief of Defense Staff, and the global military reforms were taking place. The other countries were setting the examples, for example, US, UK and China. Therefore, we also needed a Chief of Defense Staff, as well as there are new warfare domains coming up. For example, cyber warfare, space warfare and electronic warfare. Therefore, we need an integrated theater, and an integrated defense procurement was also needed. This was recommended by various defense reform committees also, including the Kargil Review Committee and the Group of Ministers report, as well as the Shekatkar Committee report also. Now, what are the duties and functions of the Chief of Defense Staff? He functions as the head of the Department of the Military Affairs in Ministry of Defense and also functions as its secretary. And he is the principal military advisor to the Defense Minister on all tri-service matters, and he is functioning as the permanent chairman of the Chiefs of Staff Committee. He is administering the tri-service organizations, agencies and commands, and he is also a member of the Defense Acquisition Council. He is functioning as the military advisor to the Nuclear Command Authority and therefore brings about the jointness of operation, logistics, transport, training, support services, communications, repairs and maintenance of the three services. He helps in the implementation of the 5-year Defense Capital Acquisition Plan and the 2-year roll-on annual acquisition plans also. And he assigns the inter-services prioritization to capital acquisition proposals based upon the anticipated budget. And he brings about the reforms in the functioning of the three services to augment the combat capabilities by reducing the wasteful expenditure. Now, Lieutenant General N.S. Rajasubramani will become the India's third Chief of Defense Staff. He will also lead therefore the Department of Military Affairs as a Secretary in the Ministry of Defense. The next article is related to Dragonfly and Damselfly. This is important in prelims under the topic General Issues on Environmental Ecology, Biodiversity and Climate Change. Before coming to the article, let's discuss a few facts regarding Dragonfly. Dragonfly are the insects in the order Odonata. This is how they look, and the insects in this group are having large multifaceted eyes, 2 pairs of wings and an elongated body. They have an excellent vision as they have a very unique structure, we can observe this, and therefore their eyes have up to 30,000 facets, and hence they have almost 360-degree vision, and this gives them a unique advantage when hunting. They are among the fastest insects known, and therefore they are the predators of flying insects like mosquitoes and flies. And they are predating the dinosaurs by more than 100 million years. They are mostly found near the freshwater habitats across the world. Now, the damselflies, they are also a close relative of the dragonfly. They are smaller and more delicate than the dragonflies. While at rest, the damselflies hold their wings straight up and together above their body, while the wings of the dragonflies remain horizontal while they are at rest. Now, coming to the article, there is a recent study which has been conducted, and it has highlighted an alarming gap in biodiversity across the Western Ghats, with researchers able to document only 65% of the dragonfly and damselfly species historically recorded in the region earlier, pointing to a potential shortfall of 35% of these ecologically critical insects. The survey recorded 143 Odonata species, that is 76 dragonflies and 67 damselflies, of which 40 were endemic to the Western Ghats. 3 species are currently classified as vulnerable, while most of the observed species fall under the data deficient and not evaluated categories on the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species. The Western Ghats is a 1600-kilometer mountain chain along the India's west coast and a globally recognized biodiversity hotspot. The Odonata species, they are highly sensitive to environmental changes. as they depend upon the freshwater ecosystems for reproduction, and they are widely regarded as the indicator taxa, meaning that their presence or absence directly reflects the ecological health of the water bodies. So the missing species may be early indicators of a deeper ecological stress. The study has claimed that there are multiple threats across the Western Ghats, including the linear infrastructure development, hydropower projects, severe pollution, large-scale land use changes, unregulated tourism, recurring forest fires, and the growing impact of the climate change, which is further fragmenting and degrading these ecosystems. The presence of 22 species under the data deficient category also suggests the need for extensive surveys across the Western Ghats to uncover the status and distribution of many lesser known species. The next article is related to natural rubber. This is important in prelims under the topic economic and social development. Before coming to the article, let us observe a few facts regarding natural rubber. Natural rubber is a polymer of isoprene. It is a native of the Amazon basin and it was introduced in Asia in 19th century. It is an equatorial crop which is found in tropical and subtropical regions, and the rubber is harvested from the latex, and it has a high tensile strength, and therefore it is used in vibration damping, tires, etc. The growing conditions of natural rubber are that it requires a humidity of about 80%, therefore grown in the tropical and subtropical regions, and a rainfall of more than 200 centimeters. It requires a sunshine of around 2000 hours, and the soil requirement is a well-drained loamy soil, and it can be grown on lateritic soil, alluvial soil, or sedimentary soil. The temperature has to be more than 25 degrees Celsius, and it is grown on elevations from 300 to 450 meters above the sea level on the hill slopes, and the yields decline as the elevations increase, as the lower temperatures are there at higher elevations and the mature soils are not there at the higher elevations. The major producers of the rubber in the world are Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia. India is the third largest producer, fourth largest consumer, and 90% of the natural rubber is produced in India via small holdings. And Kerala accounts for 90% of the natural rubber production, followed by Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Now coming to the article, the United Planters Association of Southern India has urged the government to maintain the status quo on the import duty on natural rubber, as a section of the rubber user industry has sought the reduction of the import duty on the key inputs and the raw materials. The rubber plantation sector is significant for India, as it sustains about 13 lakh growers and provides employment to about 4 lakh workers in India. In India, presently, it is cultivated around at 9.4 lakh hectares, and the production in the fiscal year 2026 is approximately 9 lakh tons, estimated at 9 lakh tons. The domestic rubber prices have shown a modest upward trend in the recent months due to geopolitical developments and the production shortages both globally and domestically. However, the Indian rubber prices, they remain low. They remain subdued in comparison to the international prices over the last 2 years. The prices of major inputs such as fertilizers, plant protection chemicals, and skilled labor have increased, although at 8 to 12% over the last decade. The next article is related to the Agni Missile along with the MIRV technology, that is multiple independently targeted re-entry vehicle. This is important in GS3 under the topic defense. The DRDO has tested the Agni 5 missile with the MIRV technology. What is the MIRV technology? This is the multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles. This enables the single missiles to target multiple locations hundreds of kilometers apart. The Agni missiles, they carry the nuclear warheads. Their range is over 5,000 kilometers, and that is aimed to counter China. And the known countries with MIRV equipped missiles include the US, Russia, China, France, and UK. The MIRV equipped missiles, they can be launched from land or from sea, including from submarines also, and each re-entry vehicle can be independently targeted. They are all launched from one missile, but they hit different targets. This Agni 5 missile has an operational range of 5,000 kilometers, has a height of 17 meters, and India has therefore joined this select group of nations, as only US, UK, Russia, France, and China have demonstrated to have the MIRV technology, and the development and deployment of the MIRV technology is a closely guarded subject. Let us also observe the 5 missiles developed under the Integrated Guided Missile Development Program of India. The Prithvi missile is a short-range surface-to-surface ballistic missile, whereas the Trishul is the short-range low-level surface-to-air missile, and the Nag is the anti-tank guided missile, and Akash is a medium-range surface-to-air missile. Whereas the Agni is the surface-to-surface ballistic missile with different ranges. The different ranges as per Agni 1 to Agni 5. Agni 1 having the shortest range of 700 to 800 kilometers, the Agni 2 having a range of 2,000 kilometers, and the Agni 3 having the range of 3,000 kilometers, Agni 4 having a range of 4,000 kilometers, and the Agni 5 having the range of 5,000 kilometers. Therefore, the Agni 5 is an intercontinental range ballistic missile with 3 solid fuel stages. The next article is related to India's first orbital data center satellite. This is important in prelims under the topic current events of national and international importance. First, what is an orbital data center? This is like a constellation of satellites which are housing the same kind of GPUs which are found in the terrestrial data centers, and it is having the AI capability that it can run the AI in the space, that it can train and run the AI models in the orbit rather than only having the capability of just relaying data to the ground stations. Therefore, we can draw an analogy to the edge computing where the computation is run close to the data generation, not on a centralized cloud. For this, an example is the Pixels Pathfinder, which will function as a single satellite demonstrator, which will be designed to test whether the ground grade hardware can function reliably in the harsh and the hot environment of the low Earth orbit. Now, why are the global firms interested in the orbital data center? Because there are constraints in the terrestrial data centers. For example, there are limits on the availability of energy. The AI usage requires a huge amount of energy. There are limits on the land as well as the water usage, water used for the cooling of the servers, etc. And there are local regulation constraints as well. And all these are amplified by the increasing demands of the artificial intelligence, the increasing demands of computation for AI. Now, there will be a solar power advantage in the orbit, as if the satellite constellation is placed in the right orbit, then the solar power is effectively available continuously and it therefore offers free electricity. Also, the Earth observation data bottleneck will be removed because the Earth observation satellites, they generate detailed heavy image files, then they are sent to the ground stations, then it becomes expensive to downlink, and if the data is processed in the orbit itself from the Earth observation satellite and then only the conclusions are sent back to the ground station, it will be more effective as well as efficient. Also, there is competitive positioning by various companies in this, for example by Elon Musk in the form of SpaceX, Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin, and Microsoft's Azure Space. Now, what are the challenges in the orbital data center? First, there is a challenge of heat management because there is vacuum there, and therefore the heat dissipation via convection does not happen because there is no air, and the GPU chips which are powered by electricity from the solar panels, they will become hot, and the space may be cold itself. The vacuum although eliminates the convection heat dissipation, therefore there will be no air to carry off the heat. The only solution is radiation. Therefore, the heat will have to be pumped through the ammonia filled loops to the deployable panels, and the heat will be radiated into the space via infrared light. But there will be radiation damage also to the equipments as well as processing. For example, bit flips, as the bits and bytes of the computers, they randomly change due to the cosmic rays. Also, the long-term semiconductor degradation will happen because of the cosmic rays, and the radiation hardened chips will be required, and they typically lag the commercial GPUs by years. Therefore, the power storage will also be required for the eclipse period when the solar power will not be available, and the maintenance will also be literally impossible because the servicing can be done only by the robots, not by human beings there, and therefore redundancy must have to be inbuilt into the system to ensure that there is no servicing requirement at all. Thank you.